We're gonna go into all the key elements behind strength training for rugby, and we're gonna start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com. If this is your first time to the channel, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you smash that notification bell so we can help you become a beast. So the sport of rugby is an extremely complicated sport. We've got to look at it right away from the perspective of, are we talking about 15s or are we talking about 7s? And I think for this discussion for strength training for rugby, although 7s is what's in the Olympics, what I want to really talk about today is mainly going to be referring to 15s. So when we're talking about 15s, there's going to be a lot longer of a game. There's clearly more athletes on the field. So when there's a little more athletes on the field, play can be a little bit more complicated. The games are much longer. The break at the half is also much longer. So that enables a lot of athletes to be a little bit bigger. And when athletes are a little bit bigger, that means the scrummaging, the mauling, that's going to be a little bit more intense. And that leads to a sport that has a lot of big dudes that are extremely fast, extremely aggressive, extremely skilled. So this is a sport that's going to be similar. It's like a perfect mold between American football and soccer, or European football as we refer to it, but we're in the United States, so everybody calls it soccer. So when we're thinking about those characteristics, you've got to have really good speed, especially if you are a fly half or a scrum half. If you're a fly half or a scrum half, you're going to be really fast. You're going to be extremely skilled. You're going to be the more talented player on the team, and on top of that, you're going to have really good passing capability. So you have to be able to handle in long periods of time that good contact, have really good speed, and still channel that really good endurance to help maintain those skills later on in the game. So more of those characteristics, there's going to be a lot of cutting. There's a lot of lateral work. There's a lot of stop and go. There's a lot of contact, okay? There's a lot of actual physical grappling. There's a lot of pushing. There's a lot of pulling. So we have to think about that as a key characteristic when we're triggering those elements that we want to focus on in the world of strength and conditioning, what we're going to be doing in the weight room. And then finally, one of those key characteristics is that we have to have really good endurance. We have to be able to handle the length of that game, the constant contact, the high levels of speed, the high levels of skill, because skill work can fatigue the brain significantly. So it's not just from that aerobic capacity, but it's also from that mental capacity that we have to focus on when we're actually training inside the weight room. So we need to analyze what are these key characteristics behind playing 15s rugby, and then how are we going to move into training and what those elements are going to be inside the weight room. And so right off the bat, we can use this to determine what those elements are going to be. And when we can determine what those elements can be, now we're going to go right into that technical coordination. So remember, you're doing really skilled passes. You're making adjustments on the fly on where your pass is going to be, what that play is going to specifically be. So I believe technical coordination is an absolute imperative part behind strength training for rugby. So what does that mean? Technical coordination means being able to coordinate your body at very high speeds with a technical movement. So this could be reflexive work. You might be doing a dumbbell snatch into a hip lock, or a power snatch, or a power clean, or a full clean. So these are all movements that have a very high degree of coordination, and they're technically focused. And if you can train that in the weight room, you're going to be able to recruit appropriately out on the field. And even if you're in the weight room and you're getting yourself into a state of fatigue while you're doing a weightlifting movement, let's say you're doing a clean off of one box that's 7 inches off the floor and you're doing 12 singles on the minute. Now by that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th minute, you're going to be very, very fatigued, but you're going to have to really focus on that mind-muscle connection to execute that technical coordination at the rate that you need it to be. And that's where it's going to transfer really well to speed, to contact, and even to endurance along with those skills. Now, another key factor behind rugby is that when we're talking about the big dudes, the props, the hookers, these are guys that are going to be huge. They're big. So they're going to be in scrums hammering each other, right? So they have to be bigger. They have to engage with a large amount of force, and they have to train with some absolute strength movements. So doing a back squat, doing a front squat, even doing some standard bodybuilding work to increase that overall mass, that's going to be a key attribute behind improving that absolute strength. If we can get these guys a little bit bigger and we're training that technical coordination, now they're walking around, they look like middle linebackers, maybe even to a point, someone like a D end, and they're absolute phenom athletes with really good speed as well. So we want to utilize absolute strength for a specific element that's going to bring out and improve their technical coordination, and overall that's going to lead to better contact and better speed. Now the next two elements that I really like to work with are going to be reactiveness and dynamic trunk control. Okay, so reactiveness, you've got to be able to cut rapidly, you've got to be able to cut and hit somebody rapidly, you have to be able to, when you're cutting, focus on utilizing your trunk. So think about this. This is an exercise I stole directly from Franz Bosch. If I'm standing with my butt against the wall and I'm raising a plate here, now all of a sudden my entire trunk, my gut, and my mid back is going to fire and recruit all at one time. I like to utilize movements like that to trigger that dynamic trunk control. Utilizing exercises for reactiveness might be, we're just doing standard plyometric work, okay? We're gonna have that plyometric work, that's gonna lead to greater speed. That's gonna lead to greater joint integrity and joint stiffness. When joint stiffness goes up, we can run faster, we can cut harder, and that is also going to help us improve that dynamic trunk control. If we're doing movements like technical coordination exercises, cleans, snatches, front squats with absolute strength, back squats, and we're pairing them accordingly with some dynamic trunk control, or we're training reactiveness and we're doing a plyometric series, then we're resting for 2 to 3 minutes, and then maybe we do some specific dynamic trunk control exercises during that break period. Now that's going to lead to greater improvement and greater execution of all those characteristics that we need out on the pitch to dominate our opponents. And finally, that last element, and I also have it as a characteristic, so it's a little bit of a crossover, is going to be endurance. Now that doesn't mean that I think rugby players should be walking around training like 800-meter runners or training like 5K runners. They shouldn't be distance runners, okay? Some of these guys need to have really, really good speed, so maybe they will be training like 200 or 400-meter runners, but they still have to be a little bit bigger. They still have to do some more absolute strength, some more hypertrophy work to increase that absolute strength. And they also have to do some technical coordination work so that they learn how to absorb force, absorb energy accordingly, and then reuse that out on the field. But it's important to recognize how endurance plays into all this. And that might mean we're getting into the sauna more regularly with our bigger guys so that we can do some easy improvements just from sauna work. We're gonna get on the bike 2 to 3 days a week. They're gonna do the assault bike for steady state cardio. It could be 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 3 times a week, just to help them increase their baseline, their foundation of endurance. Maybe they're going out for walks 3 to 4 days a week. And that's one thing that I'll say. I spent a lot of time in Suva, Fiji, and I was able to see some of the sevens guys and even some of the best guys that played for the local team. Okay, some of those guys would go out, they'd run hills. Twice a week, they'd sit there and go 10 to 12 hills right next to the stadium. And that's gonna help improve their speed and improve their overall endurance. So take that endurance from the perspective of utilizing it more from an interval-based perspective and utilize easier means of endurance, like walking, like riding the assault bike, like doing easy work on the rower, getting into the sauna, and even utilizing things like beta-alanine, something along those lines as a supplement to help drastically improve your endurance overall. Don't sit there and say, all right, endurance work, we've got to go out and run for 5 or 6 miles, because that's going to create a massive detriment to your absolute strength, your technical coordination, and you're probably even going to get a little bit slower with that reactiveness, and that's going to lead to you getting hammered out on the pitch. So utilize all of these key elements to design your strength training program. And if you need help, we put together a full program that's designed specifically with all of these elements to help improve your overall play for that specific position so that you can dominate out on that pitch and become that next absolute monster on the world stage. So if you need help with designing a program, you can click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com and pick up our strength training for rugby program. We use all of these elements to increase your training. We put it into a one periodized program that's going to help you become an absolute beast. And if you have any questions about rugby-based training, click on the link down below, head over to our subreddit and let us know what you think so we can help you dominate your opponents. I'm going to give you 7 exercises that you can use to become a better rugby player, and we're going to start right When I was at the Olympics in 2021, I was fortunate enough that I got to stay in the same building as Fiji. So I was able to see Fiji's rugby team training on a regular basis. One thing that I noticed is that a lot of ruggers love to do reflexive movements similar to this, where you might see a plate into a hip lock here. Okay, you might see something like this, but not falling over. You might see this try and target that posterior chain. Okay, you might even see them using maybe like a hydro weight, anything along those lines. I think those movements are fantastic. And even where you might see here, boom, boom, like a drop dumbbell snatch. Boom, boom. These are movements that we even use pretty consistently, but in the sport of 15s, I think there's some better movements that we can use that have a little bit more low-hanging fruit. Those movements are fantastic. Obviously, if Fiji's using them and they're doing a lot of specific plyometrics when they warmed up, they did do some lifting as well. But for the normal rugger who's just trying to make some progress, that's trying to get to that next level, one thing I believe that we can do is focus on specific movements in the gym that will transfer really well. And that's gonna take us right into that first one. And this is gonna help us in the scrum. So if we're thinking about the scrum as coming from a standstill, right? So we can see with specific athletes where they're weak and where those weak points will be. And when we did our community vote here on YouTube, I think it was like 55% of fans think that we should be doing more front squats in the realm of rugby. So we're bringing that in right here. And ideally, we would use like that front squat rack position, okay? Like a clean grip. I'm gonna show you from a bodybuilding style, I'm gonna show you something pretty cool here. 1, 2, boom, okay? 1, 2, boom. Ugh. So that's that front squat. And we're doing that from a standstill, very similar to the scrum. Now I'm gonna demonstrate from a little lower degree. Okay, so now we're gonna be able to target another weak point. And I even think as a strength coach, somebody in S&C, if you're training your guys or your women, you can even use a movement like this with an auditory command to get them to pause, 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 go. Pause, 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 go. And you can even mix that up so that then they start to really hammer that responsive strength, okay? And they have to focus on that trunk control. I think one of the best gym exercises for your core, or for your trunk, is going to be the front squat, especially from the pins. 1, 2, oh, I'm so weak there. 1, 2, boom. Okay, so reflexive movements are great, but I do think the front squat is probably the best. Now, if I'm getting ready for a maul, I've got to get deep. I'm going to be a little bit more dynamic. You're going to be in a very low position. We've got to be freaking strong. I really love the front squat. I really like those reflexive movements. If I get set here on a sled, that's gonna be the second exercise that I think that rugby players could really benefit from. And you could do this almost in the sense that you're timing it. You could figure out how much weight that you need. That's gonna transfer really well. If you have an athlete that's a little bit weaker, then you can start to improve that. You can play around with this as a load and see where you get better benefit or where you get a better response with the athlete. And I believe we should be pretty low here with that nice steep shin angle, driving as hard as possible going forward. So we can go here and you can even start with that auditory command here. Okay, so we can work through that and build that up over time. Some individuals might even want to pair that front squat with the sled. I don't think that's absolutely necessary, but both of these exercises are a fantastic way to really start to light up and make good progress as a rugger. Now we've got 5 more. This next exercise is a universal movement that we use with our small, really, really fast, quick guys, all the way up to the big dudes who also move at very, very high speed. Some of the best field athletes that we've ever trained have pushed over 150 to 180 kilos on this movement 4 reps, and that's going to be a single leg squat. Get set in position. We talked about in the beginning using the hydro weights, using the reflexive movements. That stuff does train dynamic trunk control. That does train unilateral reflexiveness and quick reaction, but it doesn't train strength in that unilateral position. And I would even argue movements like a front squat, movements like this will transfer to the reflexive movements, but the reflexive movements will not transfer to this. So we've got to think about how we can really take care of multiple different aspects or multiple different strength characteristics in the sport. So we want to get set. I'm going to have that front foot out in front of the pad. Go down. Boom. Boom. okay? And you wanna see if the athlete can hold this position stable. You don't wanna be falling all over the place. You don't wanna have them putting that foot down and up, down and up. Usually what I would recommend as a coach, you get one time where you can put it down, but if you do it twice, we're gonna terminate the set and you're gonna go down and wait. And you'll often hear, especially with some meatheads like myself, you'll also hear them say, it's not the weight, it's just the balance. But balance is part of athletics. Balance is part of coordination, okay? So we need to improve that coordination in a unilateral stance. We'll go here on the other leg. Boom, 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 okay? Typically, I do like to do the unbroken movement there, and that's gonna help us really focus on that big time intent. Hit this once or twice a week, one day a little bit heavier, one day a little bit more dynamic, build up over time. It's gonna transfer really, really well. Okay, I might be giving away what that next exercise is, and this is a movement I've seen some individuals in the rugby world in S&C talk about how the hamstring when we're sprinting is really just responsible for like an isometric action, and I don't really believe that. I think that if we're thinking through the lens of knee flexion and aggressive knee flexion especially, and hip extension, I think we end up seeing that the hamstring is way more dynamic than just that isometric hold, okay, or that isometric stability that it provides at sprinting speeds. Now, the other aspect is that when we're making contact, there's gonna be hip extension, and as we're running in full speed and we need to make cuts, we need to have a strong co-contraction through our knees. So that's where this movement comes into play. We're gonna do a classic Nordic, and I'm gonna give you a little complex because I like to fatigue the hamstrings regarding knee flexion, and I'm gonna show you a little trick that I like to use with a lot of our athletes that we train with speed-based sports. Okay, so we're gonna do a classic Nordic right here, right? Let's go 2 more. Less hip flexion than me, but I'm 40 years old and I have an excuse. Okay, now I want to hold this position. Right now, I can feel this right at the top of my hamstring into my glute. I'm fatigued slightly from that Nordic. Now what I want to do is come down almost to the floor, come back through, and I want to think squeeze at my glutes and my hamstrings, and you're going to freaking feel this, okay? Down, boom, down, boom, down, boom. So now the iso of knee flexion is going to be held by the hamstring. Then the hip extension will also be active from the hamstring. So you're getting like a double whammy here that's going to lead to some really dynamic strength and good strength endurance in the hammy. So here, oh, come back up. I like to do like 5 to 7 of the typical Nordics, and then anywhere from like 12 to 17 as a drop set on those hip extensions, and we will use these together in the exact same set over and over again. So that's one of my all-time favorites. Now, we're gonna get into some big upper body lifts next. Big upper body superset, and inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength, we've got a great group of rugby players training currently. And one of the things that we tend to do in Peak Strength, day 1, we're gonna do some big leg work. Day 2, that's where the upper body work is. And one of the main exercises that we like to use might be like an incline bench, but with a little bit of a twist, okay? So that's where this comes into play. I wanna get set, and rugby players, come on. Start doing some dumbbell work with like 50 kilos or like 40 kilos. We don't need to be down in like 25 to 30 kilo range. Like, you guys are freak athletes. Let's try and push that a little bit. I wanna see some pauses here, okay? So we can pause, press, pause, press, pause, press. This leads to some serious time under tension and some trunk stability. And you can focus on where that weakness is. Now, you could have an athlete pause here. Boom, 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 boom. Or you can have them pause at the bottom, like I just showed you here. Boom, 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 boom. I really like to use dumbbells because of the specificity towards that shoulder stability. I almost dropped that. Okay, that shoulder stability. And then also, if you have to post up on somebody, if you're in an overhead position, if you have to jump, incline dumbbell bench with the pause is fantastic. Now we're gonna lead into that second exercise that I think is really, really good for getting you to have that, we call it mat strength regarding wrestling, but where you're on the pitch and you can just manipulate individuals as easy as possible. That's what this next exercise is gonna do. So this next exercise is something that not everyone will have access to, but one of the awesome parts around Peak Strength is that you can actually replace movements with similar exercises. So the specific movement I'm gonna show you is involving a 2-inch rope. It's involving a sled, okay? If you don't have access to the rope, if you don't have access to a sled, I'm gonna demonstrate this shortly, because this is where that trunk work really comes into play, and that grip strength, and that lat stability, and that upper back strength. If you don't have access to this sled, to this rope, you can use movements like a heavier bent over row. Yes, you'll use your hamstring slightly in a heavier bent over row, but it's still a decent replacement. Or you might even see inside of peak strength, you might even see like a weighted pull-up, something like that to really strengthen those lats. So one of the coolest parts around peak strength is that we periodize this entire system using these specific exercises and even providing those exercise replacements. So this movement's gonna look like this, and I wanna think long, big pull, okay? Bring that all the way in on both sides. Don't favor one side over the other. This is another great exercise that you would then pair with that dumbbell incline bench. You hit the dumbbell incline bench with that pause, or the alternating with the pause. You come over, you hit the sled pull. Now you rest for about 2 minutes. Okay, and this is movements that you're gonna see inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. You can download Peak Strength today. You'll get 7 free days of training based off of being a rugby player. Now, we got a couple other movements, some of which are my all-time favorite for developing a freak rugby player. Rugger. Okay, when we're training an athlete that's going to be involved with a contact sport, okay, contact sport at very high speeds, we've got to make sure that we're training them for speed, for sprints. We also need to make sure that they're able to make contact as quickly as possible with a massive amount of force, because we know that they're getting into an opposing object. The opposing object, usually other human beings. So we need to train athletes to light up a lot of weight in a short period of time. And that's where the 2-box snatch comes into play. A lot of you guys are gonna say, I don't wanna snatch, I don't wanna do this. I'm gonna give you some alternatives, okay? So what I wanna see is if everybody can just ditch all of their excuses and just focus on getting this lift upwards of 100 kilos. You're gonna increase your vertical, you're gonna increase that first step, you're gonna increase that contact force. And I always make this argument too. If Caleb Dressel, who's a world champion sprinter in swimming, can power snatch 90 to 100 kilos, I think you ruggers could do that as well. So we'll get set here, just like we're gonna be doing a clean or a snatch, right? So we go a little bit wider than foot width here. I'm gonna pull as quickly as possible, make good hip contact and finish. Boom, okay, come back, boom. One more, boom. Okay, right there. Now, if you don't want to be explosive, if you don't want to rack that weight really fast and have a good strong co-contraction in your shoulders, if you don't want to develop impulse, there's still some other movements that you can use outside of the 2-box to do those things, okay? So the next movement could be something as simple as a muscle snatch, okay? So we get set here. I'll make contact. Oh, fast turnover. And then finally, if you don't want to rack at all, you can do pumps here, repetitively. 2-box snatch is still the best. Use the muscle snatch if you don't want to do the 2-box power. Finally finish with those pulls. Those are what, now I just gave you, I think, 10 gym exercises that you can use to become a better rugby player. As a rugby player, we've got to be strong enough, fast enough, powerful enough to decleat our opponents, to scrum, to score a try. We're gonna give you 5 key exercises that you can use to become an explosive rugby player, and we're gonna start right now. So in rugby, we need to be fast. We need to be athletic. We need to be really strong. And most importantly, we need to move heavy weight fast. So when we're looking at movements, if we've got big dudes, and they're out on the pitch, they might lose a lot of power by the end of a game, okay? If we have smaller guys, they might not have a lot of power even in the beginning of the game, so they're getting lit up by their opponents, okay? So we need to train some way to improve global innervation, which will in turn lead to high rates of high threshold motor unit recruitment. Okay, that's gonna help us produce a large amount of power in a short period of time. We need to train that dynamic trunk control so that we can be more agile, okay, so that we can make better moves, so that we can have better contact. And this exercise is going to be a power clean, full clean. So fortunately, we have Yvonne here who's gonna demonstrate with perfect technique how to execute a power clean and a full clean. And typically what we would do, if we've got a rugby player or a football player, somebody like that, we're gonna do maybe 5 single power cleans. So you would do a single and then you might do 2 full cleans. We might do 8 singles of a single power clean and a single full clean on the minute to really try and train that long power endurance. Okay, so Yvonne's gonna show us a power clean into that full clean with perfect execution and good speed. And then watch when he catches this, okay? Get into the fold, good, up fast, good. So that's a big key component, is that we wanna absorb that energy, get into that fold really quickly, have that stretch shortening cycle getting out of the hole, make sure we have that optimal level of mobility and hip structure, and absorb that energy as well as possible and reuse it. Okay, so when we're here, that's gonna help us be more agile out on the pitch. That's gonna help us make better decisions. And that's another key factor that we need to talk about with the power clean and full clean, is that it's important that we use aggression and maybe anger to a point to get some work done in the weight room. But one of the best aspects behind technical coordination is that you have to think logically to execute this movement. Okay, so once you start to think about that, then you start to learn the skills of co-contractions. When you have co-contractions, you diminish muscle slack. When you diminish muscle slack, you can produce more force in those co-contractions. So that might be where we're creating a co-contraction in our knee joint, so we can cut a little bit harder. In our hip, so we have a better hip lock position. So that's the main factor here behind this technical coordination movement. Let's get Yvonne to show us one more time. 1 power, 1 full. A little faster, Yvonne. Good. Up fast, good. So use this movement, power clean, full clean, at least once a week in your explosive rugby training. If you want to show off your new gains by wearing this sweet Garage Strength specific Swole t-shirt, make sure that you enter to win our free giveaway by commenting down below, making sure that you have all of your channel notifications on, and show up to our Tuesday Live to find out if you got that sweet Swole shirt. Now, let's get back to turning you into a freak rugby player. So when we're looking at the strength characteristics needed for rugby, we have to look at it through the lens of it being an open, skilled sport. And what that means is that anything can happen at any time. There's no predetermined motor pathways, okay? So at any given time, you might have to move, you might have to cut, you might have to jump, you might have to hit somebody, you might have to enter into a scrum at high speeds. And so when we're doing something along those lines, think about getting into a scrum. That's where we need to train specifically the blast impulse, okay? So blast impulse is gonna be anything where we have to produce a large amount of force in under a second. Think about, for American fans out there, if you're making contact coming off the line as an American football player, that's what we need to be training for. So in the realm of rugby, we have to be able to train that specific characteristic, but also understand that we've got 40-minute halves. And if we're playing sevens, we're gonna have 14-minute halves. But either way, we better be able to obtain a large amount of force and handle that force with power endurance over a long period of time. So not only do we need to be extremely strong and extremely explosive, but we probably should also be able to have a decent 5K. And those are all things that come into understanding the lens of training an explosive rugby player. And here are 7 other exercises to help build your rugby athleticism. So technical coordination movements are phenomenal for the legs, but are they really good for the upper body as well? Of course they are. And if we're trying to declare an opponent, okay, we're out on the pitch, we're declaring an opponent, we want to light somebody up, this is where this exercise comes into play. This is going to be a linebacker jerk. And one of the big factors behind the linebacker jerk is you're gonna be starting from that athletic stance. So this is named after the linebacker position in American football, but it can help you learn how to react very quickly from that athletic position, from being in that quarter squat. We're doing a technical movement that leads to a large amount of stability overhead, co-contractions in the shoulder, and in turn, that dynamic trunk control in a unilateral position. So Yvonne's gonna demonstrate here what that's gonna look like. I like to do about 5 sets of 3 or 6 doubles, ramping to a heavy double, depending upon the athlete's technical proficiency. Now, hopefully, Yvonne drops his back knee a little bit. Let's see it. Get set, good tension in the bar and drive. Good. Be a little bit wider with the right. Give me 2 more. Good, that's better. One more. And you wanna set good tension in the barbell. And this is almost gonna be like a vertical jump without that counter movement. So squat jump. That was a little forward. One more, Yvonne. And so again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the power clean, full clean. We've got to use logic to fix our technical execution. Good, 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 good. That was a little bit of a good correction. Okay, so you can do this again, 5 triples, 6 sets of 2. And this is a great movement that we even like to use to potentiate our muscles before a heavy bench session if we need to focus on our strength for rugby playing. Now, some people don't want to do behind the neck jerks. They don't want to do a linebacker jerk. They might not have access to jerk boxes. And one of the coolest features inside of our app Peak Strength is that you can actually replace exercises. So in the case of not having linebacker jerks or not having access to jerk boxes, you can actually replace that with a banded PA press, okay? And even if you don't have a band, and I'm using our HAF Power Elastic here, we can even do this without a band. However, I really do like having that band for that hip extension. Okay, so if I'm gonna get set here, I'm already extending my hips. All right, so I'm gonna be here, boom, 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 one more, boom. So I can do a dumbbell PA press for 5 sets of 5. Think about that hip extension connecting into my hands. This is a key exercise that we use to replace technical coordination movements inside of Peak Strength. If you guys need help with your overall training and you don't really understand what you can do with your rugby strength-based training or how to develop power output over a long period of time, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store, and you can download Peak Strength for 7 free days of training. And during those 7 free days, you can cancel at any time. But the worst thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna get 5 free workouts. And those 5 free workouts might have some unique movements like that dumbbell PA press, which is gonna help you become a more explosive rugby player. So rugby players should be squatting, back squatting traditionally, front squatting traditionally, probably once a week. But there's another movement that we could be doing to become more explosive. And if we use something like the garage strength contrast method, we can start to get more explosive as a rugby player while increasing our strength. And I would recommend doing a unilateral strength exercise, okay, and then pairing that with another movement that's going to be very complex and force you to develop that dynamic trunk control. And that's what's gonna take us into the single leg squat. So if I'm training explosive rugby players, right, I want them to be strong in a single leg position. There's going to be a lot of running. There's going to be a lot of contact when you're running. So we need to be as rigid as possible and really be able to produce a large amount of force. So we're gonna execute single leg squats that are unbroken. So let's say we're going to do a set of 3 using our Garage Strength single leg roller and pad available at garagestrength.com. Boom, boom, boom. You get a little bit of a forward lean. That's gonna help us develop those glutes and those quads. Okay, so we're here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, focus on good speed. Now, I'm gonna rest for about 30 to 40 seconds, and I'm gonna show you this sweet contrast movement. This is going to be a chaos kettlebell drop into a lunge. And what I like to do is use something like our heavy power elastic here, our HAF power elastic band. You can wrap this twice if you want, although when you're talking about rubber, you shouldn't be wrapping things twice. So that's gonna help us in this position. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have my lead leg go with my left side. I'm gonna have my right side be open. I just stimulated a large amount of high threshold motor units there. I wanna focus on my trunk position. I'm gonna go boom, 1, 2, back up. Boom, 1, 2, back up. Boom. Okay, and we wanna make sure that we have that tension in the trunk and we're not falling all over the place. That's gonna help us get into the fold and be more athletic and handle those blows. Okay, so we're here, get set. Boom. One thing you can do too as a coach is watch an athlete on the single leg squat, see how well they coordinate, see if there's a weak side, and then compare that with high speed movements like this. One more. So you can do 5 triples unbroken on the single leg, rest about 30 to 60 seconds, get to the drop chaos kettlebell lunge, and improve your overall force production and that athletic ability, which will lead to making you a more explosive rugby player. Plyometric work is great for building that elasticity, that blast impulse, which will also lead to making you a better athlete. And so when we're training plyometrics, we've got to look at rugby and think about positions out on the pitch that athletes are going to get into. They're going to enter into scrums bilaterally. They're going to be sprinting unilaterally. They're going to be jumping bilaterally and unilaterally. So we need to take that feedback and understand that when we're developing a program using plyometrics, specific to how we develop our program inside of Peak Strength, our day 3 is going to be athlete day focused, and you might see these exact exercises. And that first key movement is going to be a bilateral side jump over a bench, okay? In our case, we're gonna be utilizing our single leg roller. Again, it's available at garagestrength.com. So we're gonna be here, okay? I'm gonna go 1, 2, and I'm gonna land on that side on my left leg and do 2 single leg bounds. So that would look like this. I'm here, boom, 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 here. Now I don't wanna hop, single leg down, land, okay? Now I would come back, and I would do the exact same movement here, but train my landing on my right side. So I go 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. Now, that's my first round, so give me a break, especially on that hiccup. Ideally, we would do 5 sets to each side. I really like using the tape here. Sorry, our turf is totally destroyed. So if you're a turf company and want to sponsor Garage Strength's YouTube channel, feel free, hit us up in the comments down below. I like using that tape because we can see if we plant and jump linearly, that's gonna have better control. It's gonna have better co-contractions inside of our quad. That's a great example there. The next movement I want to demonstrate is gonna be what we call champion strides. And this is a movement that's absolutely phenomenal for developing that jump cut, okay? So if you're training a lot of American football players or rugby or soccer and you need to have a jump cut, this exercise is absolutely phenomenal. And it's gonna look like this. We're gonna go bound off of 2 legs, land on 1 leg, okay? Bound off 2 legs, bound off 1 leg, land on 2 legs. So it'll be boom, 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 okay? So it's double, single, land double. I'll demonstrate one more. Feel a little bit better about my jumping ability now. This is gonna improve our blast impulse. And remember, the games are long, 80 minutes or 28 minutes, 14-minute halves, 40-minute halves. We need to train blast impulse and sustained impulse, and we can do that with those single leg squats, and we can also do that here with some really unique plyometrics. So again, this is gonna be that champion stride here. Here, boom. Hit those champion strides, 5 to 6 sets, improve your overall athleticism to become a more explosive rugby player. What's the hardest thing to catch during a long rugby game? Your breath, duh. So that's gonna bring us into the endurance aspect, okay? And one of the big factors that we need to think about is what type of endurance do we really need to develop? I do believe there's a big payoff with like long, slow distance, okay? So getting on the assault bike, doing a rower, maybe even going out for a run over the time frame of 45 to 60 minutes. That does have some practical application to rugby playing, but I don't think it transfers the best when we're thinking about developing a freak athlete who's gonna dominate out on the pitch. When we're thinking through that lens, we need to have a large amount of force production that can be repeated. And that's where sprint interval training comes into play. So in this case, I'm gonna pretend I'm outside on a hill. I really, really like this version of sprint interval training for explosive rugby. I'm gonna get set, and I'm looking at, let's say, 5 to 10 seconds of all out work. So I'm here, our coach is with us, and we're racing each other, and we're on a hill, okay? I'm gonna get set, boom, I'm really fast. I'm gonna rest, I can come back, I'm gonna rest for about, anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds, get set and repeat, okay? And we might do this over a 20-minute time frame, okay? 15 to 20 minutes of all-out hill sprints. So that could be 10 to 12 to 15 total reps based off of that rest period, based off the action period. But the big factor is that we're training the sprint interval work, we're sprinting at high speeds, getting our heart rate to skyrocket and then drop back down. And when we do this repetitively, once, maybe twice a week, along with the play that we're doing out on the field, along with the work that we're doing inside of the gym, that's gonna lead to better performance. So again, set that 20-minute timer, get out on the hill, get out on the track, run 10 to 12 seconds all out, and then that's gonna lead to developing your speed and also developing your endurance. So explosive based rugby training has to focus on using technical coordination exercises. Then we've got to get creative and come up with those unilateral absolute strength movements. Pair those with some type of contrast exercise that's going to help you be more explosive. That's going to take us into the plyometrics that we hit, and then even those endurance training sessions focusing on sprint interval training. If you guys need help with your training, head over to peakstrength.app and you can pick up our app today. These are personalized programs that I've built specific to rugby. You can download Peak Strength, and inside of the actual interface, you can select rugby-based training. And you can set your peak date and even target the exact exercises that you can do and the number of training sessions that you want throughout that entire week. Why spend $60 on one personal training session when you can get a workout for the cost of one cup of coffee? Again, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store, and begin your journey to attain peak strength. We're gonna do one of the best workouts that you can do to increase your leg power production for the sport of rugby, and we're gonna start right now. So rugby is a sport where you have to be explosive, you have to be strong, you have to be extremely mobile, and you've gotta be able to react very quickly. And I think that when you're starting to think about training as a rugby player, you've got to analyze first, what position are you playing? And then how much hypertrophy might you need? If you're a hooker, you're gonna have to be a bit bigger. If you're a half, you're gonna have to be a little bit smaller, but a little more skilled. And so that's where this workout comes into play, is that this is actually a program and a workout that you can do basically with anyone who's playing rugby. And we're gonna start right off with one of my favorite exercises, and this is gonna be a Morris tempo back squat. I wanna see a nice controlled eccentric that leads into a rapid muscular action right out of the hole, and you're just gonna repeat that 2 to 3 reps. So it's gonna improve your hip mobility, it's gonna improve your dynamic trunk control. Take a shot, and that's gonna enhance your overall production as far as leg strength is concerned. So it might look like 1, 2, fast, and then right away. So we do a double, hit that double. And the thing is, if you take, let's say you take 60, 90 seconds break, you can slowly build up. You're starting to wake up your nervous system. You're starting to feel stronger. And that control in the eccentric is gonna help you really, really stimulate your nervous system. And then as you react quickly out of the bottom, that's where you're gonna see your position start to improve. That stretch shortening cycle is gonna feel really, really good. And that's gonna prep you for the leg workout. So let's do one more set here. Nice and controlled. 1. Right away. So 4 or 5 sets, 2 to 3 reps, build up to, you could build up to 160, 170 if you're strong. You don't need to go crazy. It's just to really get everything moving so you're primed, ready to smash this power building workout. Okay, so we're training rugby. I like to think about rugby similar to American football, similar to lacrosse, and I want to train it bilaterally from an explosive aspect, and I want to train it unilaterally. So what we're going to do after we did those Morris tempo back squats is a movement that's going to be a little bit more complex, and that's going to be dumbbell jumps, okay? I want to do 3 dumbbell jumps where I react. I'm going to drop the dumbbells. I'm going to hit 2 bounds, and I'm going to just jump up onto an easy box. So it's going to be a little bit of a change of direction. Then we're going to rest 45 seconds. We're going to hit a unilateral movement to the box. So we'll start here. And if you notice, we typically do our jumps in our back room where we have a longer turf. We had a little bit of a flooding issue last night. So we are in the middle room here in the sports performance area. So we got to make do. So we're here. 1, 2, 3, drop. 1, 2, boom. Okay, so I'd like to do that. That's the first jumping movement. Rest 30 to 45 seconds. Now, I actually think I'm gonna move this slightly. So we'll go over here. Okay, now I'm in this place where I can do a jump lunge up to the box, a side jump lunge. So I'm gonna be here, here, boom, boom, boom. Now I can switch sides here, left foot forward. Oh, I'm not as good here. So, key aspect behind training unilaterally. When my left side's forward, I suck. When my left side's back, I'm good. If you're training rugby players, try to pick apart which side they favor, because if you can figure out which side they favor, use that first. That's gonna improve that weak side. And then on top of that, when they're on the field, you can try to hide that a little bit. I know you're not gonna hide it all the time, but you can hide that weak side a little bit if you know which side your athlete struggles with to produce a ton of power. Okay, so the third group of movements for building power in our legs for rugby. We did the nice, good, slow, eccentric back squats, Morris tempo, fast out of the hole. We did doubles there. I do 5 sets. Okay, each set, 60, 90 seconds rest. Get a good warm up and then you rest about 2 to 3 minutes. Then we got into the dumbbell jumps and those side jump lunges. Okay, that's 5 or 6 sets. Rest about 30 seconds between the movements and then about 2 to 3 minutes between that. And you get a bunch of sets and you get a lot of work in. This is the last set here. This is the last group of movements that we're gonna do for building that power as a rugby player. We wanna hit another 5 or 6 sets and we wanna make sure, because we're bigger people, rugby players are gonna be larger. Really make sure the quality of the work is high to increase that power. So the last pairing here, we're gonna go bilateral and unilateral. And now this is where my video guy and I may have screwed up because I have not tested the distances out here, but that's gonna be that real-time learning, right? Is we are gonna go with a seated hurdle hop, and the hurdle hops are going to be extending, which means we have to calculate in our brain while we're jumping how to recruit differently between each jump. Okay, so we're in a seated position on the first jump and we're gonna get higher, and then on the second jump, we have to get a little bit longer, and then on the third jump, even longer. So we're actually making calculations mentally, and this is part of athletics, it's part of sports performance. So we're gonna go through this and we're gonna pair this with a unilateral movement that's gonna help us from that lateral aspect, from the lateral movement. So we're gonna start with this. Let's hope I don't screw this up. A little nervous. Oh yeah, okay. So you go through that, and we're gonna take about 30 seconds. We're gonna head into the back room now. We're gonna do a side band jump, but the side band jump that I wanna hit is gonna be pausing. So we'll get in the back here. Let's hook this up. Got our power elastics right set up. Can put this around our trunk. Okay, nice and easy. Let's go around my shoulder. Here, I'm gonna go out, boom. And so what I'm doing there is as I get pulled in, the band is pulling me. I wanna plant and hold, boom. Be stable, dynamic trunk control. Take a shot, dynamic trunk control right here. Squeeze, hold, 1, 2, 3, drive, okay? Use that glute med to drive and get that good lateral cutting. So remember, we're gonna push those squats a little bit, hit those 2 pairings, take enough rest because we're doing serious explosive work. Make sure the quality is very high. That's gonna improve your overall power output for rugby. I'm gonna give you the best speed exercises that you can use for rugby, and we're gonna start right now. I wanna start relatively easy. Oftentimes what I like to do is I actually wanna get my athletes to really learn how to plantar flex and to be stable through that ankle joint. Okay, so you could do this on a slant board or you can do this against the wall, and there's 2 parts to this, okay? We wanna get to a position where we're in this drive phase, and if we can think about sprinting very fast, think about a 40-yard dash. First step, we wanna think project. Project forward, that's gonna create that acceleration, okay? So if we're in this position and I'm trying to project forward, right? I'm gonna be here, right? And I'm gonna be trying to drive forward. Now, what I want to do is hold that isometric, let's say 5 seconds, come back here, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, back up. And when we're doing this, we wanna think about recover from the hip, push from the quad. We're doing this together, both legs, recover, push, recover, push. Now, one thing you can also do as part of your warm-up is get and hold this position, drop that heel, notice my back heel, come back up. Back heel, back up. Back heel, back up. okay? And also if you recognize that position here, I'm holding this hip lock. When we do a lot of our reflexive work, we're always getting into that hip lock position, and that's the reason why. Now, okay, we wanna look at this and say, okay, that's a pretty simple exercise, anybody can do that. The next movement, we're gonna pair with that to really wake up the hamstrings. So I'll get set here, I have a dumbbell, and I'm gonna hold here, boom, 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 okay? Nice and quick. I'm gonna switch sides, I'm gonna face this way, here. I'm gonna go hold, hold, hold. I'm gonna go nice and little droppy, a little elasticity here. Boom, okay, so we're doing that assisted RDL to wake up the hamstrings. That fast eccentric lengthens, contracts, okay? So we're gonna pair those two movements together. Let's work through that 4 or 5 sets, really wake everything up, and then we're gonna get into some more of those crazy speed exercises for rugby. So these next 2 movements, I believe are gonna carry over really, really well to the world of rugby. And I also think you likely have never seen this next movement unless you've watched one of our great speed videos over on our main channel, Garage Strength. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna get into a single leg position because single leg squats are absolutely fantastic for the start and leading through acceleration. Now, I'm gonna add a really, really unique trick here, okay? So we're gonna get set. Don't judge me, I don't have any weight on the bar. I'm gonna get set here. I'm gonna come down, and instead of doing a traditional single leg squat like this, boom, which is also fantastic, I'm gonna lean and come up. Lean, come up. Here, boom, boom. And just by adding in that little bit of a lean here, boom, I'm putting a little bit more load on that front foot, and I'm forcing myself to recruit a little bit more from the hip. This is gonna be helping us during acceleration. Now, what I like to do, let's say we do this for a triple, and we can do this at like 60 to 70% of your best single leg squat. Something like everybody who's playing rugby, at least at that elite level or sub-elite level, you should be able to use like 90 to 100 kilos, okay, for triples. We're gonna pair this, you're gonna rest about 1.5 minutes. We're gonna pair this with something that's a little bit more specific. We're gonna set this up, come over here, and I'm gonna do a plyometric into a sprint. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna plant, change direction, accelerate. Okay, so I'm gonna be here. This foot can't touch the ground. Hookers out there, no touching the ground, okay? I'm gonna go here, boom, boom, accelerate, okay? So that's how the slow motion version, which I'll be slow motion no matter what, so don't judge me. I'm gonna be here. Okay, other leg. And I would recommend, to make this a little bit more competitive, you could either have a race with a training partner, or what you could do, or you could use your timing gates, because I know rugby coaches and players love to spend a ton of money on sports performance stuff, so you could actually use timing gates for these 10 meters out of that side whiz jump. And so I'm gonna get set here, okay? Back leg can't drop. Now, my right leg here tends to be quite a bit weaker. I probably should have done this first. I'm gonna get set, plant, cut, accelerate. Here, boom, boom, boom. That was weak. That was so weak. One more. Remember that back foot though cannot go down. Here. There we go. So you can work through that 5 sets, and if you're doing this 1 to each side every set, that's gonna be 10 total sprints. So you got the forward leaning single leg squat, the side whiz into that 10 meters, and that's gonna help a lot with that speed. If you guys need help with your speed, I'm gonna give you 2 more exercises, don't worry. And if you guys need help with your training, go to peakstrength.app. We've got an entire rugby-based program inside of Peak Strength. So you can go into the app, peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. I still have 2 more movements. Download that and actually click on rugby-based training. That's gonna help you become a little bit better out on the pitch. All right, so these last 2 are gonna be some really sweet ones that anyone can do as long as they have access to a sled. The next one after this, I'm gonna show you 2 variations. So we wanna think about out on the pitch, we're doing starting positions, or we're gonna be working through acceleration. Acceleration is gonna be the absolute key, and then obviously top end matters to a point in rugby, but acceleration is gonna matter way freaking more for the sport. So when we're setting up a sled, okay, we're gonna actually do a rapid sled push. Some people will say like, oh, this is too heavy, we shouldn't do this. But I'm gonna challenge you here. Let's just do 5 to 10 meters, that's it, okay? And we can time it, right? So that's gonna help us with that speed. Then we're gonna rest about 1.5 to 2 minutes, and then we're gonna get into that more specific movement. So we're gonna go here. Let's say we're at 5 meters, not 5 minutes, and we're gonna time this here. We're just gonna drive. Okay, 5 meters, easy, that's not that far, okay? Rest about 2 minutes. Now, the next thing that I wanna do is a unilateral movement. Let's say in theory, I just rested for 2 minutes. So what I'm gonna go now, I have a target point and I wanna think about reacting quickly and driving that knee up. So I'm gonna go here, boom, 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 boom. Now, actually it wasn't too bad. My right leg's terrible. If I don't have access to mini hurdles, all I have to do to repeat that, pretend I don't have mini hurdles set up and you just set markers, or you just have a visual and you're just working through this, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so what you can go through this, let's say 8 sets, that 5 meter sled push. Rest 2 minutes, then you come 8 sets, you do 3 jumps on the right, 3 jumps on the left. We've got to get creative with that, but we got to focus on acceleration. That's going to be that big aspect around speed out on that rugby pitch. If you guys need help with your training, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, or the Apple iOS Store, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. When we're looking at rugby, we know we have to be extremely strong. We have to be extremely explosive. We've got to do a lot of speed work. We got to do a lot of agility work. There's a lot of transient speed, crazy chaos coordination. All of that stuff is what's happening out on the pitch. And we've got to train that specifically. We also need to be doing plyometric work. We also need to be doing technical coordination movements. But for this video, we're just going over absolute strength exercises that will transfer. So all of these movements we're gonna give you will provide a baseline that's gonna help you become more developed, help you become more coordinated, help you improve your technical coordination and your overall speed. So bear that in mind while we're looking through this training lens. That first exercise, I'm gonna challenge all you rugby players out there. A lot of you don't wanna do it, but it's one of the best movements that's gonna connect with your overall dynamic trunk control. It's one of the best exercises that's gonna help with your leg strength. It's also a movement that's gonna help you hit a little bit harder, and that's going to be a pause front squat. So if I get into position here, okay, ideally I would have a clean rack, but I'm holding my mic. I'm gonna go down under control, get set, up fast, okay? I wanna get even an auditory cue if I want. Down, up fast. One more here. Down, good mobility, up fast. Okay, we wanna focus on good speed of movement and pushing this consistently. Okay, if we improve our front squat, we're gonna be able to clean a little bit more. If we improve our front squat, we're gonna back squat more. And this is gonna lead to better performance out on the field. Do this 4 sets of 5, 5 sets of 3. Throughout the year, throughout all phases of parabolic periodization, if you wanna become a better rugby player. So one of the aspects that I learned when I was at the Olympics is watching some of the best rugby teams in the entire world warm up and train is that during sevens, they're gonna focus a lot more on speed work, okay? And they're a little tentative to lift heavy weight. And I know that there's a point of doing speed work, doing functional work, of using hydro weights and things like that. I know there's a point to doing that. But there's also a really, really good basis of strength that can be developed from absolute strength movements. And that's where I will give a little bit of a call out to some rugby players. Like, we could just get you a little bit stronger first and then backdoor you with the reflexive movements and with those plyometric movements. And that, if you can increase your overall muscle mass from the absolute strength movements, will help you be more powerful with the reflexive movements. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I'm gonna give you the next upper body movement. So the next exercise we're gonna focus on is going to be a dumbbell bench. Now, the way I want this to be done is with a double bounce, come up, okay? Semi-neutral, come up, okay? Double bounce, come up. I believe that every single rugby player in the entire world should be able to hold dumbbells here and press them without actually needing assistance, okay? So for here, boom, give it a little double bounce, up, one more, up. Now, if we're a bigger player, I think you should all be using about 50 plus kilos in each hand. Okay, I like to take a little bit out of that American football book and look at if I can increase my upper body strength, if I can increase my ability to push, and I have a stronger pec, and I have a stronger deltoid and tricep, that's gonna lead to better performance. So do 5 sets of 7, 5 sets of 5. Increase your dumbbell bench strength over a long period of time, and that's gonna help improve your overall performance. Now, this third key exercise is probably my favorite absolute strength movement that transfers over to the sports performance world. First, you've got to think about if we can increase our unilateral strength, if we can target our posterior chain, our hamstrings, our glutes, even our lower back, if we can have that trunk control, more stability in that precarious position, and we can start to load this, get it a little bit heavier, and even do things like unbroken reps, that's gonna help with our ability to accelerate and decelerate. And that's where this single leg squat comes into play. This is the best leg lift if we're going to increase absolute strength for sports performance, bar none. And we're gonna use our Garage Strength single leg roller and pad. Both of these are available at garagestrength.com. So if you don't have access to a roller like this, if you have to use a bench and put a towel down, that's fine. But I would recommend picking this up today because it's absolutely phenomenal. It helps you get a little bit heavier and it's a lot more comfortable. Okay, and this pad is specially formulated. It's a little bit harder foam, so it's a little bit easier on your knee when you're actually touching it, and you're not gonna slide all over the place like you might with a softer foam. So when we get into position, okay? Oh, I did these yesterday. I go here, I'm doing a triple unbroken. I'm going here. Okay, so I wanna get 3 fast, all right? I can already feel that in my glutes. Here, now this is my weak leg. I should have done this side first. I'm gonna get set. Focus on your trunk control. Focus on that good position off the bounce. There we go. Now, one of the interesting things is that when you progress through a couple sets, let's say you do 5 sets of 3 on each leg, or if we're doing 6 doubles even, and we wanna push this a little bit heavier. As you get to like set 3, set 4, set 5, your body wakes up, your nervous system gets a little bit smarter, and that neural intelligence comes into firing, and it's gonna make it easier to recruit those high threshold motor units. When we can train those in that unilateral position, it's gonna lead to better performance, and it's gonna help you run faster out on the pitch. Now, some of the big dogs out on the rugby field are gonna be crying that they can't do this next exercise. So I will give you an alternative. And that's one thing that we do inside of Peak Strength, is that we program so that if you don't have access to specific equipment inside of your program, you're able to select an alternative exercise. Peak Strength is our app where we actually periodize everything based off of specific sports and sport strength characteristics. Okay, so we identified everything that you would need as a rugby player. So you can head over to peakstrength.app, the Apple iOS store or the Google Play Store, and pick that up today for 5 free workouts. Now, the next movement is going to be a close grip pull-up. One of the big factors here is that if we can increase our upper body strength with pressing, and we can also increase our lat strength, our rhomboid strength, our bicep strength, that's gonna lead to healthier shoulders. That's gonna lead to greater joint stability. And where I'm gonna show you, and so how we wanna execute this is actually thinking about pulling our hands to our sternum, okay? So I'm gonna get set here, a little bit closer together. Come up, okay? Down, down, up, one more. Now, if you're a bigger dude and you can't do pull-ups, start doing more pull-ups. But if you're struggling with them, we can do a bent over row. Okay, so we're gonna get here. We're gonna come up, under control, up, under control. I don't wanna see this. Okay, that's gonna bring in more of the hamstrings in the lower back. We wanna see good control here, good lat stimulation, good rhomboid stimulation. Use both of these exercises, 3 sets of 5, 2 sets of 9. I even like to get my pull-ups where we have at least 1 set to failure to increase that muscular endurance. Now, if you're inside of Peak Strength, you probably know already that I love Nordic curls, okay? And a lot of people might say, absolute strength movement is Nordic curls, really? And I'm gonna make a quick argument here. When I'm training someone specific for speed, I want to hammer their hamstrings in multiple different ways with multiple different foot positions. I wanna target the biceps femoris, but also I wanna target that semitendinosus, semimembranosus, okay? We wanna make sure that the strength in our hamstring is sort of equal out, especially with those two main muscles, because that's gonna prevent any hamstring issues. Also, if we have someone who's shorter limbed, they have shorter legs, typically they're gonna be more quad dominant. So we really wanna develop their hamstring strength. And that's where if we do a technical coordination lift on an impulse day, okay, and then we follow that up with the absolute strength movement being a Nordic pull with some type of jump, maybe we do some type of contrast training. Now, what we're gonna be using is specific hamstring exercises, okay, that is gonna lead to hip extension, and then we're pairing that with some type of plyometric. So now that short-limbed individual is gonna learn how to be more explosive with their hamstrings, even while they're quad dominant. I'm gonna show you a little trick that I like to use here, okay? So if I'm just like trying to warm up here, I might do some hip extensions and squeeze my glutes forward, okay? Here, forward. Again, this is an exercise that's absolutely phenomenal for speed. Here, okay, so I'm warming up, nice and easy, okay? Now, the next thing I wanna do is maybe a little assisted. So this is even a progression that you could use. A little assisted, boom, come back up, okay? Down, come back up. And so as we get stronger, I had a little bit of a hip flexion bend there. I wanna focus on hip extension a little more off my chest. As we get stronger, we wanna do a slower eccentric, work through that full range, okay? Touch our chest and drive back up quickly. I'll demonstrate that shortly. Ideally, you get to the point where you could hold a plate on that slow eccentric, drop the plate, and then do a couple by yourself. So here would be a good example. Hopefully I can execute this perfectly. I'm gonna come down, and try to extend at the top. Down. I like to do sets of 4 to 7. Keep the rep range a little bit lower because your hamstrings respond really well to higher intensity. Now, if I have somebody who's got really weak hamstrings and they're starting to cramp in their calf, I might finish them off by doing beaker hamstrings. Like those beakers in chemistry, you're going down like this.
It's drinking the water!
Come back and forth. So we can go here, and we wanna have those toes up, dorsiflex, boom. Boom, boom. And we want to think hips through at the top and then slowly build back into that full range of motion Nordic curl. So you can do this again, 4 or 5 sets of 5, 7 reps, slow eccentric. That's going to help increase your speed and your hamstring strength so you can stay out on the pitch longer and you can run a lot faster. If you guys need help with your programming, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store. You can pick up 5 free days of training. The worst thing that's gonna happen is that you're gonna get 5 days of training for free. So start your journey to attain peak strength today, because remember, freaks, if you guys wanna become a champion, you've always gotta cultivate your power. Peace.